Field trips were disappointing.
You would think with the amount of BS that school puts us through, that to be able to take some time away and spend a day somewhere else would be immaculate. Before I ever went on my first field trip, I used to think they were on some magic school bus type ish. But they took us on the most depressing, boring, and brain-shrinking field trips.
Oh my god, going on art field trips were the fucking worst. The worst. Y'all ever go on one of those where you go to an art museum, and it's not even a good one, where they have like crazy shit? It's like those fucking modern art paintings. I remember going to one where it was a room full of white fucking paintings, like literally just a white room, and every painting was like its own thing. I mean, there were some that were like full red or full blue. There was just nothing on them, and they were like thousands of dollars. I was like, dude, what the fuck is happening right now? The aquarium was the best. What was the best field trip y'all ever went on? I only went on one field trip ever in high school, and it was to a museum that had George Washington's original tent. And my history teacher had a borderline orgasm when he saw it. And then the rest of the shit sucked. Everybody was in character. It was one of those museums where you walk around and everybody's acting like they're from the fucking 1700s. And so you want to gouge your eyes out. Because I'm like walking past this boat. I'm walking in this area that looks like a boat, but I'm just in a building. And this woman was standing there like, well, hello there. And I was like, cut the shit. I see the vape in your pocket. Cut the shit, right? You're in this fucking, what is this shit? You're in this fucking Civil War garb-esque stuff. Get the fuck out of it. What the fuck? What are you doing? The zoo? Oh, the zoo was pretty chill. Disneyland? You went on a field trip to Disneyland?
To my K through 12 years, I went on a total of about 5 field trips. Like, they were rarer than a Ben Simmons bucket. But y'all already know that every field trip that I went on was a family-sized bag of cheeks. So today, we'll be discussing the worst parts about field trips and some of my personal experiences with them. And like and subscribe if you're new. Like I said earlier, I feel like after middle school, we don't even go on field trips anymore. They were as extinct as the dinosaurs.
Nah, you would go, like, have y'all gone on a high school field trip? If you're in high school, or if you've graduated, did you go on one? I think I might have gone on 2, but there were, like, almost never. It's like a middle school thing. Not even, maybe elementary school. Yeah, it's, like, very educational if you go on one in high school.
They took us to go see. Or if we did have a field trip in high school, you had to go out of your way to go on one. See, back in elementary and middle school, the teacher would pass out permission slips to the entire class. But when you hit high school, that shit was kept undercover. Then just out of nowhere, you see a group.
Yeah, it'd be one history class. Yeah, literally. I was the one. I remember, dude, that shit was like there were our history teacher had like 10 sections of history that he taught, and like 2 of them got to go on the trip. And they were like, I don't even know how my class was one of the ones that went.
Your classmates going on and bus to an amusement park or something. And the amusement park was a one-time thing, don't get it twisted. And not to mention, my school used to be taxing the hell out of us to go on these field trips. Niggas had to pay a college tuition to go on basic-ass field trips to a museum. Like, I get it, the school gotta pay for buses, gas, and shit, but there should be no reason why I had to pay a fucking mortgage for it. The rest of the field trips that I went on must have been chose by Doodle Bob or something, bro. Now we gotta talk about how early we had to be at the school for these field trips. Now, for me personally, I already had to get up.
I loved that shit, though, dude. That's, like, nostalgic. Pulling up to the school at 5 a.m. Pulling up to the 3rd grade field trip at 5 a.m. You're sitting there like fucking half asleep, but then you see all your friends and you're like, we're going to the fucking museum. Ooh. It opens at 7 a.m. and closes at 2. Yo, you know what's really cringe though is like, I don't know, maybe it's just a me thing. I know I'm 21 now, so I'm still fairly young, but like, bro, I want to go to the museum. I don't know, man. I just want to go stare. I want to go stare at old weapons and like mummies and shit. I feel like that'd be fun. I want to, like, dude, the aquarium I went to like a year ago, and it was like kind of mid, because when you go to an aquarium, it's just kind of sad. Like, I remember when I went to the aquarium, there were a bunch of penguins there, and I was like, they hate it here. They don't like it. I know, I know they hate it here, right? So it's sad.
But if I went on a field trip, that shit was like living with insomnia. The moment I put my head down to go to sleep, I had to get right back up to go to school. And when I would get there, we had to wait an extra hour for these slow-ass teachers to put groups together. Not to mention, once we deadass had to wait for one student who decided he wanted to come a week later. If it were up to me, I would have left that nigga in the dust. But they made us wait for one person to come to school. And the crazy thing is to me is that the places we would go to would close at like 8 p.m. So there is deadass no reason for us to be leaving so early like we're headed to the airport. Now we gotta talk about the lunches. Now if you watch my video covering school lunches, and you already know about the nuclear waste they were trying to pass off as food. So when we would go on these field trips, all they would do was wrap it in saran wrap. This meant that pretty much everybody brought their own lunch. Nobody was gonna risk hospitalizing themselves with school food because they were too lazy to pack their own lunch. And obviously I took full advantage of this situation and brought the most delectable goodies I had. I'm talking Oreos, Doritos, Capri Suns. My brown paper bag was looking like a—
Yeah, the brown paper bag lunch. I never had a lunchbox. Dude, I had a lunchbox for like 6 months and I was like, this shit sucks. I gotta lug it around. Having the paper bag, sometimes it'll rip. You just gotta throw it out though when you're done.
Nikocado avocado mukbang in this bitch. But the problem is that we couldn't eat till like 5 hours later. We would be walking around all day, but couldn't sit down and regain our energy until it was damn near time to leave. The chaperones would deadass wait until our bodies were fucking see-through until they let us eat. And once we went on this field trip in this forest or something, it felt like them niggas had us looking for Bigfoot, and they made us eat outside. It was muddy and dirty as hell. It looked like everybody had dookie booty afterwards. Not to mention the bugs were jumping the shit out of us like Power Rangers. But regardless, lunch was only one of the slight W's about field trips. Now it's time to talk about the buses. Now I don't know about y'all, but whenever we would take a normal bus to a field trip, the bus would look like Pigpen had just threw a party in that motherfucker. Like
and you always wanted, yo chat, am I wrong in saying when you go on the school bus for the field trip, you always want one of the 2-seaters? You want one of the 2-seaters and you're going to take that shit yourself. Because like you're hoping that your class is small enough to where you get a 2-seater and you got your own seat. It was the fucking worst if you had the 3-seater with 2 people. Or then if it was a really overcrowded bus, you had a 3-seater with 3 people, and then you look to your right and there's a kid on a 2-seater by himself, and you're like, you fucking dickhead.
Bus would make New York City look clean. Like y'all knew a bunch of kids were gonna be on this bus, yet you refused to clean it. And more often than not, there would be too many kids for the bus and we had to triple up in one seat. And once there was 4 kids in one seat, and they deadass were sitting on each other's laps, bro. But when we would leave in the morning, it felt like everybody snorted 5 lines beforehand. It was a fucking ride on the bus, a whole bunch of tomfoolery. You couldn't even hear yourself think. But one time we had an out-of-state trip that we went on. This meant that we got to take a charter bus there. And I remember we—
Oh shit, the one with the bathroom in the back? That was the fucking best. You pop on that bus, you're like, I call this fucking seat. It's like a 6-hour bus ride. You're fucking hype as shit. You gotta... Oh, but then there was times that you sat next to the fucking one kid that you hated. Or the kid that smelled. There was one trip where I was with my friend, and I was like, this is fucking sick. There was another trip I sat next to the kid that stunk. 6 hours there. Ugh. Sitting there alone. He don't even talk. You're just there. You're just like... Everybody else is playing those duo games and shit.
We were geeked out our fucking minds. We deadass felt like celebrities, bro. And I remember it being the best experience I ever had on a bus. But let me tell y'all this. At the very back of the bus, there was a bathroom with a toilet. And if you're familiar with my channel, then you already know what dishonorable act is coming next. While we were coming back from our trip, this big ass kid, like no exaggeration, he was built like Butterbean. This nigga ran to the back of the bus and went into the bathroom. Everybody looked at the back of the bus in pure terror. We already knew what was coming next. About 15 minutes later, he opened the door, and dear God, the most stomach turning, nose hair burning, vomit-inducing smell violated our fucking noses. Oh, and did I forget to mention that the windows on the buses couldn't open? I deadass started typing my will to send to my parents. And to this day, that is the closest I've ever come to be put on a shirt. But the bus ride coming back from the field trip might possibly be the biggest vibe to ever
Yo, the worst was trying to take a piss on that bus, though. You walk into the back of the bathroom. It's in the back of the bus, right? So you hit a bump. You're fucking standing there. You're like fucking jumping and shit. Peeing all over the walls. Fucking freaking out. Trying to balance. The same thing on a plane, but it's not as bad on a plane.
Crackheads I mentioned before would be passed out, but I didn't trust falling asleep on a bus full of teenagers. Them niggas would have had my face looking like a desk in detention. Now we gotta talk about the chaperones that would come with us on these field trips. Little did we know back then, but these were the Karens before they were famous. Firstly, half the chaperones would be the teachers themselves, and y'all already know how I feel about my teachers.
Nah, chaperones were the fucking worst. Bro, I'm gonna say that right now. I'm not trying to diss anybody that has a parent that used to be a chaperone, but I feel like the majority of the parents that were chaperones on field trips were like the hawk moms that wouldn't let their kid do anything, and they would like constantly follow them around, and you'd be so annoyed that they're going because you're like, fuck, dude, I'm getting paired with Jimmy's mom, and you're gonna sit there and have zero fun. The best was when you got that gym teacher. Oh, when the gym teacher was the chaperone and you were in their tour group, you were like, yes!
But the other half would be these kids' parents. And some of them would be cool, but some of them would be the most...
My dad joined a trip once and everybody loved him. Yeah, but that's like... I feel like your dad probably wasn't like actively like, I need to go on this, right? I'm talking about the moms where the dads that are like, it's usually the moms that are like so panicky about their kid. There are a lot of times chaperones that are chill. No lie though, if I had a kid and they were like, "Hey dad, we're doing a trip to the museum. There's gonna be a bunch of dinosaur bones." I'm like, I'm on that. I'd be like, I'm in that. I'm on that trip. Right? Even if I'm not a chaperone, I'm about to pull up.
They used to be so fucking strict for no reason. I get it, you don't want to lose any kids or have anybody get hurt. But at the same time, let me get on my door shit and go explore. Like, they wouldn't let us do anything. And they were always yelling at us for no reason. They were getting
free trip, literally. You don't gotta pay. You just go on a free trip. Little free museum trip. Normally costs like $200.
mad over the smallest shit. They really thought they were intimidating niggas too. They thought they were making us shake in our boots. But in reality, nobody give a fuck about them or what they had to say. They deadass made most of my teachers look like heavenly angels.
And then you give your kids' friends crack, and now you're the cool parent. Y'all ever seen what a crack pipe is?
Now that's some shit I never thought I would witness with my pupils. Now we gotta talk about how boring most of the field trips were. I know that most of you have gone on the stereotypical museum field trip. Those were by far the worst field trips. Fuck around looked like walking around for hours looking at bones. And most of the time, there was nothing for us to interact with. It was just like window shopping at the mall when you got no bread. Another field trip that I vividly remember was to this village. And it was pretty much a bunch of grown ass niggas pretending like they were from the 1940s.
Yeah, those were the worst. Oh my god, pulling up to that shit. Somebody sitting there churning butter. Well, hello there. Well, hello there. My name's Billy Bob. We're actually churning butter today. You know, this process takes 6 hours. Shut the fuck up. Oh my god, you ever heard of a ShopRite? Dickhead, you ever go to a grocery store?
It was a bunch of old ass niggas giving lectures about how people lived back then. Like, bro, I really don't care about how old man McGucket was churning butter. And I know y'all also remember the classic zoo field trip. I think this is when I realized how corrupt and twisted zoos were. Yeah. Like, these niggas were just sitting in their pens like moody
Sad
teenagers, when in reality they should be out.
Aquariums I don't think are as bad as zoos. I mean, some zoos are all right if it's like one that's like a rehabilitation zoo or it's like animals that can't go into the wild. But zoos that just like capture animals and then shove them in a cage and they're like, throw peanuts at them. It's fucking, that one's like fucked.
Hunting a gazelle or something. They also smelled worse than butterbean from the charter bus, which seemed like a damn near impossible feat. But zoo field trips were really just depressing to me. Free my niggas out the pen. And I know y'all remember the merchandise stores that they used to have. Now back then, I had no funds to my name. And like I said earlier, the field trip itself costed a lung and a kidney. So I never had any money to bring on these field trips.
Dude, I had a few friends that took mushrooms and went to a zoo. And I've seen YouTube videos too where people will take mushrooms and go to the zoo. And it's like always the same cumulative shitty experience, because people will be like, oh dude, that'll be so sick if we're tripping staring at giraffes, and then they'll pull up and it's just like the saddest experience ever, because like they're hallucinating but they're like actively staring at like upset animals that are like that shouldn't be there, that are in the middle of like Philadelphia or something like that.
Chaperones tried their hardest.
A link? I could probably find a video of somebody talking about that shit.
But at the same time, I wasn't really missing out on shit because everything in those stores looked like it fell off the back of a fucking pickup truck. And they had the nerve to be taxing us just as much as the schools did. They deadass were charging $50 for a stuffed giraffe. I can get the same thing off Amazon for a fifth of the price. And of course, these NPCs that I went to school with were cashing out on all this shit. These museums were really trying to finesse some bands from some 12-year-olds. Put their ass behind bars for life. I also gotta mention what would happen when we would see another school on the same field trip as us. Now, I don't know about y'all, but when we seen a different school district on the same field trip as us, it was on site. There was more beef than a filet mignon. I remember me and my group of friends pulled up on another group of students and started baking them. But one time it went too far and a fight broke out, and someone from our school folded another kid like Sunday laundry. But by far, the absolute worst part about field trips is the work that we had to do after. You would think that after—
oh, the reflection assignment? And you're like, dude, really? Like, we can't just go and then come back?
Spending 6 hours at a museum that the teacher would let us go about our jolly way. But these niggas don't believe in peace. After spending a whole day at a science museum, everybody is struggling to stay awake, and they got the nerve to hand me a 5-page packet. And what's crazy is that the packet wouldn't even be about our favorite—
yeah, and it would ask you like actual facts about the museum.
experiences or anything. There'll be actual work with questions about what they were explaining on the field trip. We would have to write constitution-length essays about how photosynthesis works. My nigga, the whole point that I went on this field trip was to get away from doing this shit. At this point, I should have just stayed at school. And speaking of staying at school, finally, we gotta talk about what it was like staying behind on a field trip when most of the other kids went on it. I remember in middle school, I stayed—
dude, you just not show up. There was a few field trips that I didn't go on, and I just wouldn't go to class. Otherwise, you're just gonna be the one guy that's just sitting there, and your teacher's not even there, so they're just gonna like shove you in another class.
Behind on one field trip, and I was scared to go to school that day. I thought they were gonna make us work, but let me tell you, it was the most divine, soothing, and majestic day I've ever had at school. It was just me, my friend, and some random broad that we don't really care about. But we literally spent the entire day just playing board games and using our phones. A day away from those preposterous people just felt so therapeutic. But speaking about staying behind on the field trips just jogged my memory about the kids who will get left on the actual field trip. Once we left this kid at a science museum and we didn't realize till we were like 5 blocks away already. But nobody even realized he was missing, not even his group mates. So we had to spin the block to come pick him up. I don't think he really cared, and that probably should have been a lawsuit, but hey, I'm not the feds. But I think that's gonna cover everything in this video, man. And once again, this is just another episode in the School is Shitty.
Dude, that was a fucking good video. Lost for the sub, Sergi for the sub, Lego and Lavish, Nader for the sub, I'm Zaltz for the 3. We'll watch this short little video here about this guy tripping at a zoo because I brought it up.